Okay, everybody, this is Joseph P. Farrow with news and views from the Nefarium on Friday. This is May 31st, and I have a couple of announcements, actually a number of announcements I want to get out of the way, and then we will get on to a bit of interesting news because I've been digging into our dear friends at Monster Santo. All right. First bit of news is I talked to our friend Georgianne Hughes 2 days ago, and I can tell you that I'm a little concerned. Actually, I'm more than a little concerned because she told me that her eyes are beginning to cloud again. She's talked to her eye surgeon, and he tells her that the lenses are clouding. They're going to have to do another surgery on both eyes. Uh, Her eye doctor said this usually doesn't happen until about 10 years after a surgery, but apparently Georgianne it's happening already. And she did tell me something very disturbing, and that is that she's having to use a magnifying glass even to be able to do things on her website. So it's very critical, friends, to help her out. She's going to need another $5,000 to get this surgery done, and she just does not have that kind of money. Um, so please help her out with some donations, some prayers. She's done a lot of work over the years, all at her own expense. Uh, Most of her income that she does get, she goes and rolls that over into the shows that she uploads for free on her website. So please help her out. The other bit of news that I have is I'm still in the process of finishing up Covert Wars and the Clash of Civilizations. I'm on chapter 7 right now. I have about 5 more to go. The reason this book is taking so long is I'm taking it at a much more leisurely pace, for one, and I have some things I have to tend to coming up in a week. And this means that next week, depending on my time, there may or may not be a news and views, and if there is, it may be early or late, depending on when I get around to it. And that will also hold true for the following week. I may not get to the news and views in 2 weeks, and if I do, it may be either early or late. The reason why is I'm doing a special television thing, and this requires a bit of travel. So that's on the slate. I do have, pardon me, another conference to speak at coming up in mid-July. So this is a very busy summer. Please bear with me. Uh, I am finishing up a book right now. And also the final announcement I have to make is Dr. DeHart showed me his galleys of Shelley Unbound, which I guess is going to the printer this week. Farrell House is publishing that book. And I have to say, I am very impressed with what the publisher has done with this book. And I think you're going to enjoy Dr. DeHart's take on the authorship of Frankenstein that he presents in the book. So you have that to look forward to. We're still talking about some projects, but his time is very limited, and my time is going to be very limited this summer too, but we are still talking about some projects. Anyway, let me get to what I wanted to get to this week. Uh, I was intrigued, and many of you sent me this story, and I would have commented a little earlier on it, but I wanted to kind of do some snooping. Um, the story, and there's just one example of what's been going on, unapproved genetically modified Monsanto wheat found in Oregon. And this has caused quite an interesting reaction. And I've been predicting that this reaction is going to occur. This little article occurred in a website called Salon, and it's written by Katie McDonough. All right. And this is what she said. There's been an 80-acre field of GMO wheat that was unauthorized. In other words, this is a field planted with GMO modified wheat that was discovered in Oregon. Now, the fallout from this has been very interesting. Here's Monsanto's take has been this. She says, quote, Monsanto called the Oregon discovery, quote, unexpected, unquote, but went on to say in a statement that, quote, there is a considerable reason to believe that the presence of Roundup Ready herbicide-resistant trait in wheat, if determined to be valid, is very limited, unquote, unquote. So in other words, Monsanto is spinning this as, well, we didn't know what was going on, and there's nothing really to worry about, except there is a problem. As she points out in this article, and I'll reference it on the post, as she points out, Europe and Japan suspended trade in wheat from the United States as a result of this particular action. And now, I think just today or yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, South Korea has also suspended importation of U.S. wheat. Now, I've been predicting for some time, and I'll make the prediction again, that the continued mercantilist policy of the United States government in promoting GMO food and American agribusiness companies around the world is going to backfire, and it's going to backfire big time. Because number one, common sense would tell us that if you're going to introduce this kind of stuff into the food chain, that you should have done at least a good 2 to 3 generations of scientific testing to determine if this stuff was indeed safe to eat. This has not been done. I don't care what the claims are by these companies. We haven't seen that kind of extensive long-term testing done, and already, as most of you know, there are independent studies, and there were as early as the 1980s in Great Britain independent scientists studying these things and raising alarms about their safety. And of course, as Dr. DeHart and I pointed out in Transhumanism, these scientists quickly were pressured by corporations and corrupt governments, and they lost their jobs. All right, so the science has been tinkered, it's been doctored, but nonetheless, independent studies continue to be done, questioning the safety and reliability of these genetically modified crops. And more recently, I've blogged about that pig herd in Denmark, a Danish farmer who, noticing his pigs were getting sick and his litters were falling and the piglets were increasingly unhealthy, he took all of his pigs off of GMO food and the health is restored. Big surprise. Now, what I find interesting and what I've been predicting is that this is going to backfire. And it's going to backfire when the BRICSA nations, as I like to call them now, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, when these nations get wise to the fact that the Western world, the EU, you'll recall, has recently decided that we're going to regulate heirloom plants. In other words, plants that are not patentable are therefore going to have to be registered with the government. So in other words, if you're growing common, average, ordinary garden variety petunias or begonias or what have you, you're going to have to register that with the government, which is of course nonsense. It's BS. The reaction in the West, the growing awareness that there's something wrong with GMOs and the corporations promoting them, and the mercantilist policies of the governments trying to get this stuff spread, is going to provoke a reaction from the BRICSA nations. I'm predicting, they are going to start making non-GMO seeds available on the world market. And they're probably going to do so in a fashion that undercuts the price of these subsidized American agribusiness giants. And that means you're going to see a stampede to regular, ordinary, thousands of years old seeds that agronomical practice has brought into existence, and that the GMO advocates are trying to get out of existence so that they can have their royalties off of their patented seeds. So this is a big story. Now, in researching what's been going on, I ran into a story that's about 3 years old now, actually about 2.5. This appeared in the Nation magazine, and the author is a fellow by the name of Jeremy Scahill, all right? And I'll just hold the article up for you so that you can see the headline, Blackwater's Black Ops. Now, I want to read part of this article because you're not going to believe what it contains. It says, quote, through Total Intelligence and the Terrorism Research Center, and folks, these are the names of private companies, private security and intelligence companies. Think, if you will, of the 19th century Pinkerton agency in this country, all right? What you're dealing with is a big, huge intelligence security private firm, all right? These are subsidiaries of Blackwater. Blackwater also did business with a range of multinational corporations. According to internal Total Intelligence Communications, biotech giant Monsanto, the world's largest supplier of genetically modified seeds, hired the firm in 2008 and 2009. The relationship between the two companies appears to have been solidified in January 2008 when Total Intelligence Chairman Cofer Black traveled to Zurich to meet with Kevin Wilson, Monsanto's security manager for global issues. After the meeting in Zurich, Black sent an email to other Blackwater executives, including to Prince and Prado at their Blackwater email addresses. Black wrote that Wilson, quote, understands that we can span collection from the internet to reach out to boots on the ground on legitimate basis protecting the Monsanto brand name. Ahead of the curve info and insight heads up is what he is looking for, unquote. Now, that was the quotation from the email. Continuing with the article, quote, Black added that Total Intelligence would, quote, develop into acting as the intel arm of Monsanto, unquote. Black also noted that Monsanto was concerned about animal rights activists and that they discussed how Blackwater, quote, could have our persons actually join activist groups legally, unquote. Black wrote that initial payments to Total Intelligence would be paid out of Monsanto's, quote, generous protection budget, unquote, but would eventually become a line item in the company's annual budget. He estimated the potential payments to Total Intelligence at between $100,000 and $500,000. According to the documents, Monsanto paid Total Intelligence $127,000 in 2008 and $105,000 in 2009. Reached by telephone and asked about the meeting with Black in Zurich, Monsanto's Wilson initially said, quote, I'm not going to discuss it with you, unquote. In a subsequent email to the Nation, Wilson confirmed that he met Black in Zurich and that Monsanto hired Total Intelligence in 2008 and worked with the company until early 2010. He denied that he and Black discussed infiltrating animal rights groups, stating, quote, there was no such discussion, unquote. He claimed that Total Intelligence only provided Monsanto, quote, with reports about the activities of groups or individuals that could pose a risk to company personnel or operations around the world, which were developed by monitoring local media reports and other publicly available information. The subject matter ranged from information regarding terrorist incidents in Asia or kidnappings in Central America to scanning the content of activist blogs and websites, unquote. Wilson asserted that Black told him Total Intelligence was, quote, a completely separate entity from Blackwater, unquote. So there you have it. You have an agribusiness giant hiring private intelligence firms to monitor activist groups and those raising questions. Basically what that would mean is simply those raising questions about the safety of GMOs and the policies, the mercantilist policies of government-sponsored legislation to ease their passage into the food chain and to push the product on international customers. Now, frankly, I don't know about you, but even though the idea of hiring private intelligence and security corporations is an old thing, I mean, it's nothing new, it's been going on for a long time. I referenced the Pinkerton agency earlier. What bothers me here is the potential that this has to quash free speech, open expression of opinion on the whole issue of GMOs. And ultimately, given the corruption that we've seen coming out of government and corporations lately, I would put nothing past these people. I would not be surprised if we were to learn at some point in the future that monies were used for wet work or so-called wet operations on the part of some of these big corporations, not necessarily in this country, but in poorer countries where these products have been pushed and quite literally in some cases dumped. This wouldn't surprise me to see that this is going to happen. Now, that brings me to a final prediction. I've been predicting that the BRICSA nations, if they're smart, will jump on this anti-GMO bandwagon and begin selling actual average ordinary run-of-the-mill heirloom seeds, non-GMO seeds around the world, all right, if they're smart. The other thing I think we're going to have to watch for now is watch for how those nations' media might cover stories that like this that appeared in the Nation magazine, where Monsanto and other agribusiness companies are hiring these private intelligence corporations to collect data and keep the agribusiness giants ahead of the curve on information as to what's happening out there. So anyway, that's what we have to look forward to. I thought you'd be interested in that. I'll try and reference those articles. Again, folks, please be on the watch for Shelley Unbound, Dr. Hart's book. Please help out George Ann with her eyes. And bear in mind, in the next couple of weeks, my schedule is going to be a little bit unusual, so don't be surprised if news and views is early or late, or there's no news and views at all. Anyway, I'll see you on the flip side, everybody. God bless.